Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Flaneur Talks podcast. I'm Melina and I'm here with Amber and Azaria, here to talk to you about our university experiences. This episode will focus on first year and getting into uni as a whole, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to do more episodes on second year, third year, and any sort of postgraduate courses we might have done. But before we start, I just want to mention how, as we're recording this, Joe Biden's inauguration is underway currently, and regardless of political alignment, I think it's interesting to mention because it was actually during our first year that Donald Trump became president. So do you guys remember where you were in November 2016, bright-eyed first year students, when Trump became the president-elect?
Oh my god, Huddersfield Uni. I didn't even think it was that far away. Oh my god, that makes me feel so old.
No, it's literally been 4 years since we started uni, and I just thought that was quite a cool reminder that we're doing the uni episode on the day that the next president is being sworn in.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Azaria, where were you?
I was just starting uni as well, actually. So I went to Sheffield Hallam, but I was commuting and it wasn't fun, personally. But we can get onto that a little bit later. But that's where I was.
And Melina, where were you? What uni were you at?
I was at Lancaster Uni. It's a really great place, honestly. But I actually went to there was an election party that we did. And we started the night, very bright-eyed. And by the end of it, I think we were all a little downtrodden. So I think, as we've said before, we all went to high school together. And we were all in the same sixth form college doing A-levels. So it's during A-levels that you will probably look into what uni you want to go to, what courses you want to do. I just wanted to start there. What were your guys' experience with choosing a uni? What did you look for? Were you looking for someone with a good nightlife or a good sort of social aspect? Were you looking at societies, or was it genuinely just the course? Azaria, what was it for you?
So for me, I was looking at which universities did a specific course. So at the time, I actually wanted to do Japanese studies. So I was looking at all the universities that actually did that, as opposed to looking at, nightlife and what was it like in the area. I was looking for specific courses. Turns out I didn't end up doing Japanese studies, but I still went to a university in the same city because by that point, I'd already made friends who were doing Japanese studies, and they were all a bit sad that I wasn't going to do the course, but I still kept in contact with them and said, hey, I'll just be going to Sheffield Hallam instead. And they're like, yay, we still get to see you. So I guess that was kind of a factor into it as to, where friends were going, but not necessarily from high school or sixth form or anything like that.
I always find it interesting that one thing that they always said in A-levels that I don't really think I took to heart at the time was they'd always say, don't go to a uni just because your friends are going there. And honestly, I think that is a really smart thing for people to look at. If you're looking at going to uni, if you're in A-levels at the moment thinking about uni or thinking about whether to just go off to work instead, you will keep in touch with a lot of your friends, but you make so many friends who are in the same boat as you, either on your course or who are just in the city, in the same community, just doing first year as well. So I think that's really cool that you kept in touch with them. Amber, what about you? What was your sort of what helped you choose where you went and what course you did?
Fashion obviously is quite a big area, and not every university does it to a high standard. At that time, Huddersfield was doing the best international fashion buying course at the time. They've got the best grades for up north anyway. That and the grade levels were quite in the middle, so it wasn't like you had to get the highest grades to get in, compared to down south and compared to Leeds Uni, for example, which is very high. Also, I did find when going on the experiences to go look at the unis on open days, Huddersfield was the only one to show you other students' work. They were very welcoming and they always wanted to get involved. They wanted to know what you were doing and things like that. Whereas I found quite a few different unis, which I won't mention, didn't actually show you any work, and they were quite abrupt with the way that they kind of did their open days. as well. But on the aspects of like choosing from A levels, for example, the one thing that I'd say about that is if you're doing GCSEs, for example, you should look at what you kind of want to do now and whether you've got specific requirements at A level to do to get into that course. So for example, fashion buying, I had to have either an art and design aspect or a fashion aspect at A level to actually get into the course. So that's kind of one thing that I always looked out for doing the A level kind of aspect to get into the uni. But overall, it was just for the course aspect, not the nightlife for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, at least back then, we weren't really major on like nightlife and stuff.
Yeah.
I think for me, I don't really know what motivated me, but I did mainly look at unis up north. I'm very prideful of my northern heritage. So I picked unis like York, Leeds, Huddersfield, and obviously Lancaster, and I think I did UCL as well. And I was looking specifically at York and UCL because they did a specific history course. I did history, by the way, that it gave you a placement year abroad. So it was a 4-year course, 2 years at the uni, 1 year abroad, and then you're coming back for your final year to do your dissertation. And I really like the idea of doing like a year abroad or something, but unfortunately, because it was a very new sort of concept at the time, for history specifically, there weren't that many places on those courses. So mainly they were like only courses of like 90 students, whereas for most history courses it's around like 300 or so. And I went to a lot of open days at different unis, same as Amber, and a lot of history departments did come off as a bit sort of snobby in a way, and that really turned me off. And I know for some people that can actually, it makes them feel like the department has a bit more sort of experience if they hold themselves with like very high regard. But for me, it just wasn't something that interested me. And I remember going to Lancaster with my mum, and we had an amazing day out. It was a really great uni. You know, it's a campus uni as well, which I thought was quite cool. And because I was quite introverted at the time and I had a lot of anxiety, the idea of being in like sort of an enclosed community, it made me feel a lot less stressed about the idea. Azaria, what course did you end up doing?
So I ended up doing childhood studies, because essentially my career path wanted to go towards teaching English in Japan. It's kind of expanded into South Korea now, but I feel like that's another topic for another time. But I ended up doing childhood studies. So because I didn't end up getting onto the Japanese studies course, I thought, what's another way for me to get qualifications for essentially the same career path? And I realized that I don't need to learn Japanese language and all about Japanese culture formally for me to be able to teach English in Japan. Having an understanding of, you know, children, how they behave, how best they learn and things like that, I realized might be a little bit better in this specific sense. So I guess for me, it's kind of, I gave myself the advice of, if you don't get what you want straight away, is there an alternative you could maybe do that will get you to the same place? It might take a little bit more time, but at least you're still getting there and at least you're still making progress towards it.
Yeah, I think that's super useful for people who are looking into careers. Sometimes the most straightforward path isn't the right one for you, especially with sciences. There are multiple ways to get in to a science course, but in the same way with social sciences, and as you said, Azaria, with like the idea of you had like this goal in mind and it was just about like finding the right path for you. And I mean, I've listened to multiple conversations between you and Amber where you've spoken Japanese. You know, I'm no expert, but I'm pretty sure you've got a very good understanding of it. Even if you didn't have like the formal qualifications in Japanese.
Bigging up here. Ooh.
I think you mentioned as well at the start that you commuted. So Amber, you stayed at home. What was your like thought process with that, or how did you actually find that in first year?
Staying at home, so obviously where I lived, it were only a 20-minute commute on the train to get to Huddersfield. and working out the price of renting in the halls compared to a month's train ticket, for example, it worked out a lot cheaper at the time. With like maintenance loans that obviously we get in the UK, because of my parents had their high bracket, I didn't get that much maintenance loan, so it wasn't viable for me to spend loads of money on renting when I can just pay, say, I think I paid £60 a month just to travel there and back on the train. And it was just a lot easier to do that with. Plus as well, I'm not someone that was interested in nightlife. It just, you know, at the end of the day, I know that a lot of people do go into halls because they want to make friends and they want to do the nightlife or whatever. And that to me wasn't a priority at the time, because I was very much involved in studying and being more into study instead of making friends or whatever. So it was the course that kind of driven me to go, right, I want to stay at home because I'd rather be able to do that commute, get back easier than actually staying on campus. Because I'm not gonna lie, like staying in a campus is quite expensive for what you get. I know at the time it was about £500 to £600 a month just to stay in a hall, compared to paying £60. It's just it were a no-brainer for me. But for you, obviously, Melina, you had to move out.
Yeah, so from where I live, Lancaster is about an hour and a half on trains, depending on which route you go with. So, and I wanted to move out as well. I'm really into like the whole independence thing, getting out. Again, with Lancaster being a campus uni, I wasn't, you know, in the middle of town. It was genuinely like I'd roll out of bed 5 minutes before a lecture or a seminar, and I would just like walk out and I'm there. For me, I really liked the idea of being in a different city and moving out. And I mean, my accommodation, it wasn't that expensive a month, I think. It still was, you know, quite expensive, but I think for what I got, it was actually a lot better. I think uni accommodation is something where it is a bit hit or miss. You know, you can really tell that companies don't care about students from the way that they market accommodation. What you get is, it's not worth it in any sense the majority of the time. My sister, she did her first year last year and she was in Manchester, and her accommodation was absolutely horrendous. She was paying more than I did. I had an ensuite, everything was like really new. The kitchen was really nice. There were a couple problems here and there, but overall it was definitely like a better student room than you usually get offered. What my sister got instead, there was like, when we got there was damp all over the place. The ceiling and the walls were cracked. I don't think they had hot water for a couple weeks, and they weren't given any amenities, so they didn't have like a kettle, they didn't have a vacuum, ironing board, anything, whereas we were given all of that as part of the accommodation package. Yeah, so I feel like that is one of the things where I would definitely recommend, if you are looking at unis, definitely look at their accommodation and look at the dates when you need to have your preferences in by. You don't always get your first choice, because Lancaster was a collegiate uni. We basically had like different colleges that you could be in. It sounds very Harry Potter. It wasn't. It didn't really matter much except for when it came to like the sports season. But I think I had originally planned to be in one of the more central colleges, and I ended up in Pendle, which I really liked. It was quite nice, but I don't think it was any of our first choices. Yeah, everyone in my flat said like this wasn't the one that they'd chosen first. It was like the second or third option. It is difficult when looking for accommodation, but that is something where you definitely need to look at it, and you definitely need to have your forms in as early as possible to get your first choice. So Azaria, did you end up moving, or did you stay at home in first year then?
So I think I mentioned briefly earlier that I stayed at home for my first year, and that's mainly because I went through a weird version of clearing. It was clearing, but I ended up getting contacted pretty quickly by like the course coordinator. So I didn't have time to pack up my stuff and move because the course was starting in like a week, 2 weeks. Now, Sheffield Hallam, I'll mention this, but Sheffield Hallam has a policy essentially that every first year is guaranteed accommodation in Sheffield. I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't made aware of it by anyone, even though I did try and look at things like that. So I'd say definitely have a look at, your university's policies on accommodation, especially for first year, because it would have saved me a commute. And overall, from where I live, it was about an hour and a half to get there, and that's getting the quickest train, getting the quickest train. Otherwise, it could take up to 2 hours, 2.5 hours. On some days, if I'm having a full day of lectures, fair enough, I wouldn't mind making the hour and a half trip. But if it's, say, one seminar and then the seminar gets cancelled when I'm on my way there, then it's a bit of a joke, really. So I didn't really like commuting for that aspect. And joining societies, for example, some of them could last until, later on in the evening. By that point, I'm thinking, am I going to be able to make the last train home? Because the last quick train home is 20 past 10. And then am I going to have time, once I'm back in my home city, are there going to be buses running from town? So it was kind of worrying about things on top of university, of am I going to be stranded in the middle of Sheffield, even though I've got all these friends, but just turning up to their house when I hardly know them still because it's first year, and saying, hi, can I stay at your house? Because I was really bad at time management. I don't think they would have accepted that as early as the beginning of first year. So that was my experience, but I did end up moving out.
Was that in second year then that you moved out?
Yeah, in a second and third year I ended up moving out. So in second year I lived with 5 other people, and then in third year I lived with 2 other people, so kind of still getting away from home a bit, although the second accommodation that I stayed in wasn't very nice at all.
Yeah, again, student accommodation, it is an absolute joke. Landlords, they have this view of students as just being the party people, the people who are out all night, who don't care about their accommodation, but the majority of people, especially in second and third year, aren't like that, because first year you are partying a lot of the time, or you are trying to make more friends, so you're socializing more, but second and third you are definitely doing more studies because they do count. I remember everyone saying first year doesn't count because it doesn't go towards your final grade, and I think a lot of students really take that to heart, and they think, well, as long as I get 40% or whatever it was, then they're happy to just spend the rest of their time and money doing whatever, which can mean that, accommodation gets a bit wrecked sometimes. But again, that is not the majority of people. Yeah, I remember doing this commute to Sheffield from time to time, and that is a joke to say that by car it's only 45 minutes, but then by train the fastest you get was it an hour and a half?
No, it was 40 minutes for me, but it's factoring in the time taking the bus, waiting in the train station. There could be delays. The quickest is usually 1 hour 30 from where I live.
Yeah, I get that. So did you, Azaria, have a good sort of freshers week? For anyone who didn't go to uni or hasn't had a UK uni experience, freshers week is basically the first week where you're trying to make new friends. There's a lot going on. They have a lot of events that the uni organises or the students' union organises. A lot of nights out. This is where you sort of meet the societies and sort of get involved in more of the uni life.
Well, in my first year, because I joined during clearing and I was more stressed about the actual course, and also because I was living in Leeds and wasn't actually there, I didn't really experience a freshers week during my first year, which I find a bit sad now that I look back at it, because I never got to look at every single society there was or anything like that. I'd maybe get the back end of it. Maybe if I'm coming out of a lecture or something, I'd see a line for free Domino's pizza and I'd join that, but I never actually went to a freshers fair or anything during first year. Second and third year I did, because I actually participated in them. So in second and third year I was actually part of a committee in society. Sorry, not during second and third year. During third year and after I'd graduated, I was part of a committee. So I was like organising performances for it, and the actual thought behind some of the societies like performances and the stuff that they put on, it's really intricate when you're actually participating in it, and the amount of work that goes into it, you just don't really see it. Like, you might see a performance for 10-15 minutes, if that, and then you're done. Some people are just passing by, don't even pay attention at all. So it's really interesting to look at everything in a freshers fair. So if you are going to go to a freshers fair, look around as much as you can, take as many freebies as you can, because you may or may not end up broke just before Christmas and wait really, really happily for your student finance to come in January.
Are you speaking from experience, Azaria?
I'm speaking from the experience that I was always poor before Christmas and very, very excited for January. And then summer came round and I got jobs at like the university, so they wouldn't be on because obviously it's summer. What are you doing in the library in the summer? Most people aren't. So having that money to kind of last from when you finish to the next year, when you're possibly moving to a different accommodation where they want, say, I don't know, they want £1,000 up front, and you just don't have £1,000 laying around because you spent it on food because you're hungry all the time. So yeah, that was me. That was my poor uni experience. Am I still poor? Kind of. Move, Amber.
Yeah. What was your freshers experience in first year?
I didn't go to freshers because I am very much into studying. I decided not to go. With Freshers Week as well, with I think our course, for example, that first week where Freshers was supposed to happen, we actually were straight into the course and we had coursework to do straight away. So I did not go to Freshers. I didn't go to anything that kind of gave you the freebies. I didn't go for the free pizza, sadly. I'm sorry.
It was so worth it. You missed out.
I know a lot of the girls from my course, I know they were giving out, because there's quite a few clubs around the university in Huddersfield. They were giving you loads of stuff so you can get free entry into places and then free drinks before midnight. And all of the girls decided they wanted to do that, but me, myself, no, I was more interested in doing the coursework. That was my freshers.
I really liked the sort of freshers fairs and society stuff, but I don't know why. This is just a thing about me. Anytime I go somewhere new, I immediately get a cold, which I know is a bit of a hot topic at the moment with the current pandemic. When I arrived at uni for the first week, I went out like the first day and had a few drinks, and then the next day I just had like a massive freshers flu. I have like the weakest immune system around. And I remember like on the second day or something, we had to go and get our pictures taken for our ID, and we had to actually register at the uni, which is usually a very long and tedious experience anyway. You end up just standing in a line with like all your forms and paperwork and whatever. You go in and it is kind of like a factory when you just sit there and keep sort of moving around, giving each person like a different piece of paper till you get your ID. But I didn't realise they were taking photos, and I looked absolutely horrific because, I'd just been like coughing up my lungs the entire night. And then, I really enjoyed the sort of society side of things. That is like a really fun part of it, and it really gets you involved immediately. Yeah, I ended up sort of looking at a lot of different societies. I didn't necessarily go to them, but I do think it is a really good idea to just have a look, sign up to as many as you want, check them out on social media, because a lot of them do have like a Facebook page or an Instagram page or a Twitter page. Speaking of which, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, we are at Flaneur Talks podcast, and on Twitter, we are at Flaneur Talks. Just a little heads up there. So definitely look at societies, because especially if you have moved to a new city, what I found was that being part of societies really helped sort of move along the socializing experience after Freshers Week. After you sort of do the nights out And I mean, I was really lucky. I really liked my flatmates, sorry, and they were really nice. So we got along quite well. But if you don't, and there are a lot of people who unfortunately end up in a house full of people that they just don't like or they just don't get along with through no fault of anyone's, I think it is useful to just have a society or somewhere outside of that and outside of your course where you can just like go and chat and talk to people who have similar interests. I mean, I remember I joined the anime society during first year. A lot of those end up with quite dramatic ends, but there are a lot of societies. There are language societies where you can go and learn languages. And I think we'll be talking about societies a lot more in the next few uni episodes, because it is something that we've all sort of been a part of in some shape or form. So that is sort of the main crux of first year. Obviously, this is the difference between like first year and second and third year, where you're mainly focusing on your studies. I'm sure Amber will have a lot more to say as the studious person that she is. Hopefully in the next couple of episodes about uni life, we'll talk about study and revision tips, thoughts on like coursework versus exams, and how you feel during like second year when you've had, you know, your first taste of freedom, you've gone through that, and now you're kind of becoming more of an adult, you're getting more used to it. But yeah, that is basically it for this episode of Flaneur Talks. As usual, please listen on Spotify. We will have it up on YouTube as well, and we also will have our website, Flaneur Talks Podcast, where you can listen as well. So have a good week, everyone. I've been your host, Melina, with Amber and Azaria. Listen next week when we will be talking about travel.
Woo, travel.
Thanks, guys.